Great. So hi everybody. My name is Progress Verico, and I'm happy to have you guys here today. With me on the screen, you can see Miss Veda Woods, who is our guest speaker today. She is the founder and CEO of Protect Us Kids, a foundation in the US. She's also a cybersecurity expert and an ex-chief information security officer under the Obama administration. Ms. Vida is going to talk to us and share with us about navigating a career in tech. We would use the question and answer format. So I would ask her like a bunch of questions and she would share and respond to them based on her experience. I organized this conference in this month of the International Women's Month, just as a way of empowering women, young women especially, and support them with various knowledge and skills that they need to navigate life. Because one thing I've come to understand is that many of us, especially young Black women, we do not have enough access to mentors, like people or women that have gone before us, that we can, find inspiration from the experience and that can support us with mentoring and all of that. So knowledge is power. So I believe that this is a way of supporting and empowering ourselves, inclusive, to navigate life and just make the most of our lives. So I hope that you would benefit, take a thing or two from this session. If you have a background in tech already, or if you're intending to get into tech, just sit around and let's keep this going. So I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Vida to introduce us to herself, tell us about her wonderful work and everything that she does, and then we'll dive right in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Progress. Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to have an opportunity to talk about this important topic. It's kind of funny, I've been in cyber or technology for almost 30 years, so it's very interesting but humbling and inspiring to see you progress and so many young people that have an interest and the strides that have been made thus far, but we definitely have a long way to go. For myself, as Progress mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of a nonprofit here in Washington, D.C. in the United States. It's called Protect Us Kids Foundation, and it is primarily focused on providing resources, advocacy, outreach, as well as, I want to say, support system for young people globally within rural and marginalized countries and communities on how they can protect themselves online. But most importantly, we serve as a voice or as a platform for young people to have a voice, to really talk about things that are pertinent to them, that are important to them when it comes to communicating online. As everybody is fully aware, there are so many various types of issues that occur online, positive as well as not so positive. And so part of the challenge is to make sure that we can create a foundation that's really conducive to everyone, especially for young people. And it's a wonderful organization. After Protect Us Kids, or prior to Protect Us Kids, I have a variety of roles. As Progress mentioned, being a political appointee under Obama administration for both his terms was perhaps the most amazing point in my career. And to be very fair, I haven't found quite as much as excitement, except with running my nonprofit. Prior to that, I worked in the national security defense intel arena for a number of years. And that's really where I like to say I received my hands-on application and understanding of this thing called cyber. For me, coming up through the ranks, cybersecurity was really about protecting our civil liberties as people. It was, of course, understanding how we were moving very quickly from physical warfare to virtual warfare. And how were we going to actually be able to mitigate these impending threats that we can actually see, and those threats that, to be fair, we really were not aware of what was coming down the pipe. And so to see where we are right now, there's still a lot of work, a lot of energy. The difference between now and then, there's a lot more focus on cyber. When I started, it wasn't called cyber, which is rather interesting. It was really just primarily another duty that you did within your IT department. Now to see that there's such a focus is amazing, and there's so much opportunity, especially for women. There's so much opportunity in this space. So Progress, again, I have to commend you for bringing this topic up, because I always get excited when it's time for us to talk about cyber and what we can do in cyber together.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for that introduction and for sharing. So my first question to you would be, from the very foundation of your career, how did you get into tech? What inspired you? Like, how did you get in there? Yeah.
Well, surprisingly enough, I didn't necessarily think that I was necessarily going to fall into this thing called tech. I think what it was is I enjoyed technology. There were so many things that were happening in terms of what you could do, especially from a creative standpoint. So for me, I was initially drawn to the tech field through the arts. I was actually going to try to pursue a career as a graphic illustrator. I went through a process where I went to the art school and where they provide you constructive criticism on your portfolios. And back then there wasn't a lot of push in terms of understanding what a mentor was. And so you kind of just went in there and threw yourself to the wolves, and whatever you were impacted with, you came out, and whether you had a few scars from the critique, or whether you were able to, hold your own. And for me, every opportunity was very, very much focused on being a means to improve the quality of life, right? And for myself, growing up on the South Side of Chicago, these opportunities were small. And so it was a big deal, right? To go through every process was a big deal. And for me, I had to look and think about some things once I went through that constructive criticism of my portfolio, not knowing that that's actually part of the process, especially in the arts, is to have your artwork actually critiqued and to enable you to actually professionally develop your skills. But at the time, I took it personally, and I said, "Oh no, I suck." So I have to find another avenue. I decided, because my mom worked within healthcare, that maybe I would be an occupational therapist, right? Something where I knew I could sustain income and sustain a quality of life. And I thought I was going to pursue that, but that didn't necessarily work out either, because I took a tour of a hospital department, trauma unit specifically, and I came out in tears. So that wasn't ready for me either. And as I was talking to people at work and other folks, they were mentioning that the government was hiring. And just so happened I applied for a position, and I happened to land a role as a data analyst in the Federal Bureau of Investigations here in DC, in the Washington field office. And that was really the catalyst in terms of me understanding that, technology is fun, but there's so many different ways in terms of how it can be applied in a manner of different things. And in this instance, it was being applied to really identify how people were exploiting other people online. And this was back in I want to say the early 90s. And I was fascinated by that, right? I was like, wow, people are actually leveraging technology to traffic women and children. And I was really stumped by that. And I wanted to learn more about the field. And so that's how I actually got into this thing called tech. Something that's consistent with me that I've learned to appreciate as I've gotten older is that I'm purpose driven, and being able to help people and be able to solve social issues and social problems. Technology provides such an array of opportunities for you to do just that, right? So for me, that's where my interest spun from, and it just took off from there.
Amazing. Thank you very much for sharing. I'm curious to know what is the job of a data analyst like? And this is basically the question where I'm asking, what are the roles in tech that young people can consider? Because I know like there is data analyst, as you mentioned, there is project management, there is different loads of roles. And what is data analyst, and like what are the other roles that young people can take advantage of when thinking of going into tech?
So if you take out the first word, right, data, because you can say cyber analyst, you can say a threat intelligence analyst, you can say identity access management analyst, a forensics analyst, understanding the term analyst and what that really means. And this is very important, especially if you have an inkling of liking to do research, right? And so analyst is, of course, as most know, is just another form in terms of analysis and being able to conduct analysis to identify a specific result or outcome of something. And so in this instance, a data analyst, you're actually providing analysis against a bank of data, and that data is being assessed because you're trying to identify outcome to a specific requirement or criteria. And normally when you look at analysis, there's a series of reports that has to come from that, right? Because why are you conducting analysis? What's the end result? There's a lot of documentation involved in that. But what's fascinating about being in any type of technical analyst type of role is that you really get an opportunity to think and use those qualitative and quantitative skills in terms of trying to identify patterns from very disparate pieces of information, as well as being able to provide some groundbreaking research in reports so that upper management can actually be able to understand and consume those reports in support of their strategy and in support of the programs that you're supporting. So there's a variety of different roles in that. For myself, I was entry level going into the Federal Bureau of Investigations. And so my role, I was placed on a pharmaceutical healthcare fraud squad. And I was a data analyst that was there to take some specific types of information that the special agents were bringing in. And that information was actually required to be entered into the IT system at the time. And so that other individuals within the squad or within the department were able to take that information, consume it, and ready their reporting and aid them in their investigations, right? And it was a very interesting role in that it helped me learn a lot of the why. In respect to my job and what we were doing as a department overall, because you're inundated with so many different types of pieces of data that needs to be sourced, as well as being able to identify those things that are not applicable and not relevant. And that's the biggest thing in terms of analysis. You're trying to eliminate the error or ambiguity when it comes to any type of reporting. And so it's an excellent role for those who love to research and want to know why. I always say females tend to do very well because we always want to know why something is the way it is. And we always want to research and understand, not just do, but we really want to understand what's behind the processes and why are we doing what we're doing. And so, being a data analyst or a cybersecurity analyst, et cetera, is a very fruitful career move, but it also is a move up, right? And so typically analyst positions are entry level, going into junior, mid-junior level as you progress up the ranks. And so you use that analyst position to really gain a competency, skill sets, and the applied hands-on experience that you need so you can catapult yourself to the next level, depending on whatever career path that you choose to take.
Amazing, thank you. My third question would be, are there factors to consider when a young person is considering getting into tech? What are the basics that they need to keep in mind before thinking about that?
Well, okay, Progress, this is probably my a little bit of my bias, right? Because I'm always looking to solve problems. But I would say for young people, whether it's a role in tech or anything, but we're going to stick specifically with technology. Other than the fact that seems to be on the forefront of everybody's minds, and it's very important, don't get me wrong, is that, gaining a job within the tech field pretty much enables you to have and improve your quality of life. It will open so many doors for you in regards to opportunities, it will actually be able to provide a completely different outlook in terms of even your career, right? Because technology is very dynamic, it's constantly moving. And so it's very different than perhaps traditional roles or traditional disciplines where there's a tried and true formula that has been taught, for the past 50, 60, 70, sometimes even 100 years. Technology changes so much that before you know it, there's even new type of roles and positions that have cropped up in a very short time span. So, being able to feel comfortable with adapting to change is probably going to be one of your greatest assets. I think another thing in terms of having a career in technology is understanding that other than the compensation piece, right? Because I know how important that is to everybody. Really understand why you're in the role in the first place. Ask yourself a question, why am I in this role? Why does this particular role exist? Why does this particular discipline exist? And what exactly is it trying to solve? Because your jobs, whatever job positions that you take, those positions and those roles are actually helping to support something or solve something, right? And so when you're in technology, depending on where you are, and let's just talk about cyber, it's really about understanding how to protect those things that are most invaluable to us. So if you choose a career in tech, not just cyber, but a career in tech, really think about how you can apply that towards solving real world problems. And I really push that a lot because again, technology is exciting, it's fun, it's diverse, you can be innovative, you can be creative, but there are also some moral, ethical issues that you need to make sure that you always address. With that innovation, it requires balance, right? And so as much as it enables us to be able to do so many amazing things, unfortunately, at the same time, it also enables us to perhaps cause a negative impact or an unforeseen impact on others. And so, when we speak about inclusiveness, it's about understanding that with that innovation and technology and those roles that you wish to pursue in technology, just making sure that you really have a clear understanding of the impact of what you're doing and the impact that it has on others. And I know that's a blanket statement, it's very high level, but if you take that approach, irrespective of whatever role that you want to take in tech, you will actually be very forward thinking, and it will increase your creativity and your and the way you think and critique about things, because you'll be able to apply various technologies to solve a lot of everyday mundane tasks and a lot of areas that we probably don't even take for granted in terms of trying to be able to facilitate doing things better. And you see that with individuals that leverage technology to, build all the apps that we all love, and they're just wonderful, right? They help us do things so much more efficiently. They help automate so many manual things that we do. It's just amazing at the speed of light. Even with you and I, Progress, sitting on this Zoom call, the fact that we are leveraging, virtual conference and leveraging this technology and being able to communicate, being in a completely different country, and not having to travel there, right? We can have these conversations. That is actually solving a problem. But at the same token, this same type of technology actually can pose some challenges for other groups that you might not even think about. And when I say that, I mean, for example, older generation, them being able to keep up and understand the technologies that are constantly being pushed out. When you're creating something within the tech space and you want to go into that space, think about how you can actually build technologies that can help others that are often not thought about as much. And the older population typically is not thought about as much in terms of as we innovate and become creative. There's a lot of opportunity in terms of jobs and pay to really have a focus on the seniors, because that's a space that most haven't tapped into. I'm giving you guys some a little bit of tips. Some of the other areas, of course, in regards to healthcare, being able to develop technologies in that field, right? To be able to improve processes, things that we take for granted in your own community, things that you do on the day-to-day, clean water, our water and waste systems. How can we leverage technology to actually help us improve those wastewater systems and make it available to all, right? There's so many different things that you can do. And so I really, really encourage you, as you think about those roles in technology, again, try to apply that to how you can actually solve some very important social issues and really help in terms of making sure that everyone is able to maintain a very positive level of sustainability in our communities and just in the world overall.
Brilliant, thank you. I think I found that very interesting that you mentioned that, because most times what I find is that when people think about tech, because it is one of the trending industries right now, they only often consider the financial benefits. So like, tech says, I earn this amount of dollars, of pounds every month and stuff like that. But also considering the impact that you're making, why are you there and what are you hoping to contribute with your skills in that space is very, very important as well. But yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. What are the perks and the challenges of working in tech?
Ah, that's interesting. I think we named some of the some of the actual perks, right? Progress you just mentioned in terms of the income compensation, opportunities to really be creative and innovative in terms of thinking of new things and having an opportunity to participate in projects and programs that are going to have a significant impact on a population or on an event or people. That's very important. And it's very cool to work within those dimensions. I think another thing about having some perks within the tech space is, to be fair and very honest with you, cybersecurity overall is an amazing field to be in. Tech overall is an amazing field to be in. But on the downside, and not so much downside, because there's always a balance, right? You do need to be aware that it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of painstaking work. There is a lot of failure in tech. I think that's important to point that out, right? And so you will fail constantly, but that's actually important in order for you to truly be innovative, right? We don't come up with things just out of the blue and they happen. There's a few times where that actually happens by accident, right? We're able to discover a new vaccine or a new development by accident, right? And that is something that we can capitalize off of. But for the most part, technology is a field where you have to constantly keep your competencies and your skill sets up to par. So once you get your first certification, or once you graduate from your particular academic institution, or you want to progress and learn the next level of coding language to help you, just understand that you're going to be doing that for the duration of your career if you want to remain competitive, right? And so you have to have a love of learning. You have to have a love of being able to adapt at a moment's notice, because as I mentioned earlier on, the technology's changed. So as soon as you actually get to the point where you've mastered a particular domain in cybersecurity, for example, and it's probably already old, and you have to start keeping up what's the newest language that's out there, or the newest innovative technology that's out there, where you may actually have to think about potential threats that are impacting that technology. So you always have to have your thinking cap on and be open to learning. That can be a positive for those who love to learn. But if you're going into this field for a quick fix, it probably, in terms of compensation, you're going to be unhappy really quickly. Because the money isn't really the most fulfilling part. Yes, money can make things easier in terms of you having access, but money doesn't give you fulfillment. It doesn't. Some people think it does, but for most of us, we have to have other things in our life other than just our job, right? We have to have something that we can hold on to. So just the fact of understanding that this is a competitive field, which is good, but at the same time, it's going to require you to constantly be learning and researching and trying to think about how to solve problems, right? Because this is an area of constant issues and challenges. and your successes are often short-lived, and then you move on to the next. So I would think overall, it's a wonderful, in spite of all of that, right? We haven't, as human beings, been able to evolve to how we are right now, just focused on being stagnant or focused on the status quo. We've never been that way. When you look at some of the major achievements in the world, especially in technology, there has been a lot of pain and struggle to get to the next point, but it's really through committed people who have a vision and can see, right, how you can leverage technology actually for the greater good, and how you can leverage technology to really be able to make our lives even more impactful, efficient, and more creative. And I think that's I keep going on the creative because that's just myself. But I think that this is one of the few fields where you can pretty much align technology to any other discipline on the planet. Everything from a biologist to a musician to a celebrity, etc. All of those different things, all of those people are leveraging technology. And with that, there is a avenue in terms of there being the potential threat to have an impact on that technology that's being used. And so there's a need for people to be able to understand that and create solutions and apply measures, right, to mitigate that. So you have so many different areas. I think also, just to be really transparent, there is a huge, and that's a different conversation, Progress, I won't go into that, but there's a huge need for diversity in technology and diversity in cyber. I feel a little something type of way when I say that, because when you stress that so much and you hear that, that means that we're not being fair in the first place. That's how I look at that, right? And so because of that, there's an opportunity for all of you to have a chance to really take advantage of opportunities in respect to hiring. There's a lot of employers that are directly looking at diverse hires. There's a lot of opportunities in terms of grants, sponsorship opportunities that are focused on diverse hires. Irrespective of that, that is a plus, right? Because it enables it to open doors for those of us that want to get into a field that honestly is very traditionally monolithic in terms of how it looks, and even in terms of way of thinking. But because those opportunities are there, take advantage of those and use those opportunities to leverage yourself into roles, and don't be afraid to take on roles that might be a little bit hesitant about. Nobody has the answer, and you can leverage all of the positives and the negatives in terms of the tech space. I really do believe that the positives outweigh the negatives, but it's also your mindset. And so as long as you have a positive mindset, you have a mindset that you want to be able to contribute positively to society and within your community in a very big way, this is definitely a field that I think all of you should have an interest in taking a look at and pursuing.
Wow, thank you very much for that. I'm just curious, in terms of the challenges still, I wonder if you experience things like imposter syndrome, especially working in a male-dominated tech industry and also, being a Black woman as well. Did you experience any of that, and how were you able to overcome that?
So, it's interesting. It depends on what it was. And the reason why I say that, here in the States and in Progress, you said I can be transparent. So I'll be transparent. Here in the States, it's no secret, there's a lot of challenges in terms of systemic issues where people of color don't necessarily have the same playing field coming right off the bat, right? And so when you're in an environment where the opportunities are not balanced, right? Everybody doesn't start off with the same of everything, the same level of education, the same economic status, the same opportunities as others. It's not like that here. And so some have to actually try to figure out how to deal with things that are outside of their control. So those things that are systemic within a system of how a a country works has a major impact in terms of what direction and how much and how fast you can actually be able to reach the goals that you have for yourself, right? There's so many different factors in that. I bring that up because I grew up in a very volatile environment in the urban area of the United States. I mentioned before the South Side of Chicago. So my nothing could have been worse for me except staying in that environment. And so education and reading enabled me to realize that there was something more. So I was always confident in terms of pursuing that because nothing could be worse than where I came from. And so for me, the thing about the imposter thing didn't dawn on me, truthfully, Progress, until I got into like corporate America. As I started ascending the ladder, I'm thinking, because I'm putting in 500%, right? I'm trying to follow all the rules, all the steps that you have to take. It says you have to do all these different things in order to progress to the next level. Remaining competitive, studying, trying to keep my expertise and my craft sharp. I'm doing all these things. And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm having a really hard time with getting people to actually see or acknowledge or provide me the opportunity to execute against those crafts that I've spent so much time trying to learn and trying to execute. I'm not given the same opportunities as my peers and being confused about it. And that was a challenge for me, right? I couldn't understand it. And I was the type of person where I questioned, I'm not understanding why don't I have the same opportunity as the other person has the same opportunity, and what makes it different for me? And you can never get a clear answer. And so dealing with those type of things that are outside of your control, what I really had to figure out, Progress, is understanding and choosing my battles wisely, right? Because I can't force an immediate change, but I can contribute to a future longstanding change based on the decisions that I make in my current state, right? And so the biggest challenge that I had was not letting others rejection or no have a mark on what I am and what I know I am and what I can bring to the table. Because what's fascinating is, your story and your experience and where you come from, and you know who you are as a person. And when someone tells you something different, especially when you've put so much work into it, it can actually steal your confidence. It'll make you start questioning yourself, and that's that imposter syndrome that I can potentially say I started questioning my capabilities, not because I was necessarily failing in my craft at all. It's because of all the other stuff that I didn't understand, and it just did not click with me why I could not move to like where I wanted to based on what I was told and taught were the steps to progress and to the next level. So that was a hard challenge. How I was able to manage that, and to this day, I think it's a lifelong thing that you manage, is by having what we call a personal board of directors, right? And what that really means is, those people in your life where it may be something about that particular person that you can talk to about something that's very helpful for you, and have a diverse group. It doesn't have to be a person at your job. It can be family, it can be friends, it can be coworkers, just people in your life where you feel like you every time you speak with them or you're around them, you learn something from them. And when you run into these issues where it's less about your technical acumen, and there's all of these other external factors that come into play that impede your professional development and starts to really chip away at your confidence, get that assurance from the people that know you, that support you. And it's okay to feel insecurity, but leverage that feeling towards becoming more and more grounded by having that support system. If you don't have that support system, there's a myriad of groups forums that you can join where you can have like-minded people in a discipline that you're interested in or you're aspiring to be in. Just where you can ask questions and everyone is contributing. Surround yourself around positive, supportive people, because trust and believe, when you go out into the workforce, that may not necessarily be your circle on a day-to-day. And so you have to be able to leverage that network. You have to be able to leverage that support system to mitigate those feelings of lack of confidence. That is the biggest deterrent for most people of color in the tech field. It's not the technical acumen. Understand, we have to be 500% just to get in, right? We have to jump through all these hoops just to get in. So that's not what the issue is a technical acumen at all. We're SMEs in our craft and we'll push ourselves. What's the challenge again is being able to hold your own and have that support system so that you can understand the difference between constructive criticism, right? And that type of criticism or microaggression behavior that's happening that doesn't have really anything to do with what you bring to the table, but it has everything to do because of your presence, right? Sometimes, you come into an environment and you're so talented, and those talents sometimes cause challenges with others who see your talent. And some people take that as a positive because they understand that, your talent actually helps the team overall, but some people take that as a threat. And that can be at all levels in your role in a job. So really just trying to understand how to navigate that space. And I know I'm going on and on, but I just think it's so important because, it breaks my heart on a regular when I talk to young people and I see just, all of the challenges that they've overcome, right? From a technical standpoint, right? They're really pushing themselves, and even from a personal standpoint. And then the work, it finally feel like you've made it in terms of a career or what have you. And all of a sudden you're inundated with stuff that has nothing to do with your technical acumen. Nobody taught you all of these weird things that you'll encounter in the workplace. So I think imposter syndrome is real. But I also think on the flip side, having that supportive network and the supportive group of people to help you through those challenges is actually your best defense when it comes to making sure that you can keep your eyes on the prize and you can stay focused on the things that are important to you.
Just to double click on what you said, what I'm hearing is, to overcome all of these challenges, one needs to be resilient. One is you should be able to be your own biggest cheerleader in spaces where, you need to speak to your manager about your performance, or reviewing or having an appraiser or something, like drawing attention to what you're doing so that they see your talent. Because sometimes it's a shame, but sometimes you have to actually draw the attention to what you are doing, which is not supposed to be the case, because if you are a talented woman or Black woman or whoever you are supposed to be able to get your flowers. Like, people should see you and recognize you for what you do. You don't need to put an extra effort to draw their attention, because other races probably do not do that. They're just seen and they shine through with their talent and their skills. So as you said, be resilient, but also choose your battles. Choose what you want to focus on, because when you do all these things, you expend energy, and your energy and your time are precious to you as well. I have a friend who currently works in the tech industry in the US. And one of the things that she complained of, which is why I asked the question, is, working in a white male dominated environment, whenever, she tries to speak or share her thoughts on different topics, she gets spoken over. She would share like a great idea, but then nobody would see it. But when someone else repeats what she said, they'll be like, oh, that's a good idea. But she's like, but I said that, right? So it's quite challenging, especially as a woman, the way we were raised, the way society has build us to be perceived in some way. But thank you very much for sharing that. That's really powerful. I wanted to ask, this is the second to the last question. How can women maintain professionalism in the tech industry or in your workplace generally? How can you maintain professionalism?
By making sure that you do self-care before you go into the workplace. And what I mean by that is take care of you first. That's important. You asked that question, how to maintain professionalism. Well, that actually starts before you get to work, and before you get there, right? And so, being able to have an outlet is very important to work in any working environment. Remember, you're working amongst people that honestly are complete strangers, and you're spending more time with strangers than you are with your own family on average in a day, right? So it's very important that you have some time to nurture your mind and your body and your spirit, and keep clarity, and really be able to ground yourself in who you are, so that when you walk into a workplace, right, and you have to put on whatever you have to put on, and that's physical as well as mentally, in order to maintain your professionalism, that you have the bandwidth and you have the mindset and the clarity to be able to execute that to the point it becomes innate in your behavior, right? There's there's something called diplomacy. I was afforded, and I'm really appreciative of this fact because I worked in the executive office of the federal government, as well as in national security and other areas in government. The public sector is very different in terms of how you interact with others. And there's this thing called executing and implementing diplomacy. And having a manner of diplomacy is important because you often have to influence those who may not necessarily agree with your approach, or may not necessarily agree with the thought leadership that's being provided. But irrespective of that, differences of opinions, right? Differences of management style. When you become an expert in diplomacy, you'd be surprised in terms of how you can influence and get things done and really maintain your professionalism, because you've learned how to build relationships in spite of those things, right? And so for me, I was taught very early on that regardless of what I think about myself or my family or my friends, first impression means a lot. But after that first impression, now everybody's going to hold you to that standard. So it behooves you to be able to take time out, learn how to remove yourself from situations. If you have a temper, if you're kind of short fused, if you don't feel well and you may not feel like smiling, and or someone may do something at work, or say something like some of those issues that your friend is experiencing, that's very, unfortunately, extremely common, especially for women, and Black women, very much so, of being talked over or talked as second person in a meeting full of people, as if or talking to you as if you're a child, right? There's all of these things, these little microaggressions and things like that. But in the end, you have to keep your professionalism, because if you don't keep your professionalism, that one mistake or slip up will actually have a huge impact, and it's very hard to recover from. It's not impossible to recover from it. But unfortunately, we're held to a higher standard, which is fascinating. We're held to a higher standard in terms of how we should behave and how we should look in the workplace, right? It's very fascinating to me. But at the same, even more so than our peers, right? We can't drop a curse word or profanity or say things kind of side-eyed or express a tone of voice. We have to be very careful with that, because we are deemed aggressive if we are actually very assertive and confident in what we're trying to convey. And so we have to look at the room and make observations and change our tone and our posture. It's very tiring to do that. Very tiring. But that is considered professionalism, right? Because we have to be able to assimilate within the environment that we're in, within the workplace. And I don't care if it's corporate or if it's fintech or whatever, there's a culture there, right? And we have to be able to maintain that aspect of the culture. But the reality is that we're also very, very human. So give yourself some grace. And when you feel overwhelmed, if you feel like you're going to come to tears, or you feel like you're going to lose your temper, or if you just feel like, you know what, this is too painful to deal with, you have every right in the world to excuse yourself, and take a break and take a breather, right? Because it is challenging to go through all of those microaggressions and those issues that, again, have nothing to do with your technical acumen. But again, when you have a sense of self and you know what you bring to the table, in spite of what others are saying, you would not be in your position if you were not qualified to be there. And if you can remember that, you can maintain that professionalism. That professionalism comes from the confidence of knowing who you are and where you stand in your beliefs, and how you stand is who you are. Even if you don't know all the answers, that's okay. That's a sign of an excellent leader. You're not supposed to know all the answers. We're all learning, right? And so if you come in there and you have an open mind, and you're able to see people's behavior and the things that they say don't have a reflection on you. So more often than not, it's often the other person has some things about them. And you, unfortunately, are bringing those things out, right? Because you are a person that's actually holding a portfolio of skills and knowledge that you can provide, that actually those people that are doing things perhaps that can, put a chip in your professionalism, they're doing that because of their own insecurities and other human things that people go through, right? So remember why you're at work in the first place. Work is work, right? Work is not a playground, right? And so as long as you can keep that in your mind in terms of how you want to carry yourself, and believing in yourself, and again, having that personal board of directors, you can maintain that professionalism irrespective of what you encounter, because you've mastered the art of diplomacy, and you've mastered the art of relationships. And most importantly, you've mastered the art of understanding who you are as an individual and what you bring to the
table. Amazing. Thank you so much. My last and final question would be, in hindsight, are there any mistakes that you might want to share for young women who, are either getting into the tech industry or are already in there, to be aware of when choosing, a tech career?
Oh, we make mistakes all the time. So let me think of something that, this is a very common one. We shortchange ourselves for some reason, and we apologize. I haven't figured out what that is yet. I'm sure somebody knows what it is, but we have a habit, women in particular, of shortchanging ourselves or apologizing for being present. And what I mean by that is, if you want to take on a job and the job has XYZ criteria in it, and you want to take that job on, right? You're at work and you want to try something new. Why start off your conversations apologizing before you provide your point? A lot of women do that. I'm sorry, I just want to ask you XYZ. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm just trying to see blah, blah, blah. Well, forgive me if I say something, but I think I want to make a point. We do that often. And we do that because we're trying to we're trying to get people to see us. And we don't want to appear like we are all of those other things, right? Especially for Black women. This is a big one. We don't want to appear a certain way. We want to bring them in. We want them to feel comfortable before we even get our point across. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes that we do. Remember, we talk about the professionalism piece, right? I know for myself, I did a lot of that because I was trying to get people to, I'm looking at them, I'm trying to get them to understand where I'm coming from, or if I'm watching their behavior and their demeanor, and I'm like, oh, they're not getting it. And so I start apologizing. And you don't need to apologize. Sometimes you just need to pause and just get your thoughts together. And you can just say, excuse me, just collecting my thoughts. And then present what it is that you have to say, right? And I think that it's to your point, Progress, how we've been raised, a lot of us. I know for me, being humble, I was taught that as a very young girl. And I have that in me even to this day, where I'm humble because that's my comfort space, but also because I'm listening to other people, right? But there's a time and a place when I have to assert myself. There's a time and place when you have to assert yourself. And if you don't practice that early on, it will have an impact on your career. It will have an impact, trust me. Even if you're like 500% knocking it out the park in terms of your skills, you're knocking them projects out the park, but if you're not able to articulate your thoughts unapologetically, it can have an impact in terms of you even moving to the next level. Now, it's not fair, but it's how society perceives us, right? And so we have to get to the point where stop apologizing. You don't have to start the sentence with "I'm sorry." You can start it with a smile. I do that often. I'll start it with a smile, and then I get my point across. And then I'll say, any questions? Does that make sense to you? Do I need to clarify? That type of thing, right? And so learning the art of being able to speak without apologizing, I think that was probably one of the biggest things that I wish I mastered early enough, and also not being afraid to ask questions, even when nobody else is asking them. Trust me, nobody else knows they really want to ask that question too. So just ask the question. What's the worst that's gonna happen? Yes, it could be a room full of men. Often it is in this space. And everybody's talking, and you can listen to people and you're like, they really don't know what they're talking about, right? You're like, what are they talking about? And everybody's nodding their head like, yeah. And you're like, I know, that doesn't make any sense, right? And just like, excuse me, perhaps I heard that wrong. I actually see it this way. Can you please explain what you mean by what you just said? See what I just did, right? So I'm asking the question, but I'm putting it back on another person to answer it. But I'm letting everybody know that makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense. And if it still doesn't make sense, you just simply say, okay, we can take that offline. I would like to learn more about, I still have some more questions, but we can take that offline, right? It's how you present yourself. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Trust me, nobody knows the answer. And trust and believe asking questions gives you more knowledge, and it gives you a one-up, and it helps you in terms of progressing in anything that you do in your life. So don't be afraid to ask questions. That's another thing too. I have others, but I leave it at that, Progress, because of time.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was just laughing because it's so relatable. I think it just also reminds me of this quote that my friend made. She said, the fact that a confident person says something stupid doesn't make that thing any less stupid. So, sometimes we just listen to people speak and we are afraid of asking questions, or like asking them if what they're saying makes sense or something, or clarifying what they're saying, because we are afraid to look stupid, or you don't want to be the dumb one who doesn't get it. So every other person gets it, but you don't get it. But actually, that's not always the case, because sometimes people might be looking for who to ask the question. And when you eventually do, they will be grateful to you for asking the question. Well, yeah, thank you so much. So powerful. Yeah, sorry, did you want to say something?
No, I said absolutely. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? So
Yeah,
some chuckles, life goes on. You asked your
yeah,
question, didn't you? And you got your answer, hopefully. So it's okay.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah. Right. Thank you so much. I think we have come to the point where we take questions and answers now. That was a very, very powerful sharing, full of information. Thank you so much, Ms. Vida. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It was a lot of fun. We have to do this more often. I love
Yeah,
talking to you, and I hope everybody
definitely.
have participated loves it too.
Yeah. So I'm gonna bring the others on the screen so they can talk and ask questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and just ask a question, or you can drop a chat if you prefer that way as well.
Hi,
Hi, Christiana. How are you?
I'm okay. All right, just a question though. So in an environment with a lot of aggressive persons, very sarcastic, how do you be assertive in an environment like that?
Where sarcasm is what it is, right? When somebody is excessively sarcastic, they have insecurities going on. They're trying to discredit because they feel threatened by something, whatever it is, right? Remember, people's behavior has nothing to do with you.
Right.
It really doesn't. And so after that person is finished with their sarcasm, and you can continue your conversation, and you can even say, "Are you finished?" Okay.
Okay.
As I said before, this is what I blah, 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 blah. Can you answer that question? Oh, I
Right.
answered blah, 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 blah. Not really, but that's okay. We can take it offline or we can table it for now. But that wasn't what I asked. What I asked was this, this, and this, and this. What can a
Right.
person do? Continuously be sarcastic while it started looking a little odd for the other person, right? Because they're trying to get laughter and they're trying to get camaraderie in the room from others to make themselves feel important.
True.
And it's putting fear in another person and getting people to side with you is a false sense of empowerment. So
Right.
when you recognize that, you let them get all the chuckles out and you let them know, right? And this is where you have to be, you might have to raise your voice a little bit, because typically when that happens and people want to keep talking, have you noticed that? Like they'll say something sarcastic, people laughing and they want to go, excuse me, I still have a question that hasn't been answered.
Right.
I speak. I need to repeat my question. And then you repeat your question and they probably won't answer it. Maybe they will, that's great. But the sarcasm, that's something I had to learn. You have no control over other people, but you have full control over yourself. Remember that.
That is true.
You don't have any control over anybody else. So you're not going to stop sarcasm. You're not going to stop people with microaggressions. You're not going to stop that. That's unfortunately the ugly side of being human with a lot of folks. But what you do have is full control over yourself and how you counter that, right? And sometimes it's just simply holding your ground and repeating what you already said. And letting the other person and let the other person talk. If they don't have anything tangible to say, you say, you know what? Still didn't answer my question, but thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate your response. Everybody around is like, ooh, she didn't get her question answered. So afterwards, you might get pulled by the teacher or somebody and be like, can you hold it can I talk to you for a second? I was really thinking about what you were saying. You understand what I'm saying? Like you're putting it out there, like you answer my question, but that's okay. I'll go research or I'll talk to you after whatever, but don't be intimidated by sarcasm. That's a reflection of a person in themselves. It's no reflection on you. It really isn't.
That's true. Thank you.
Welcome.
Right. Is there any more questions? I personally have exhausted all my questions. So if anyone wants to ask any question, this is the time. Otherwise, I am going to close the session because it's been powerful.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So, and hopefully somebody will unmute. You all should be happy because you don't have your video on like me. So you can actually unmute, but I'm really curious as to what did you gain to learn from today's session? There's a reason why you joined it. If you have an interest in technology and you're trying to figure out how to navigate the space, and we all know that it's a male-dominated environment, what exactly are your concerns that you're hoping to get addressed that you can leverage in your own situation? You don't have to get into specifics, but is anybody experiencing something at work or in school where you have an interest in technology, you're not sure you really want to go in the field, or you're positive you want to go, but you're like, man, it just seems like there's this other stuff that's underlying. I'm just curious. I always wonder like why people join sessions, you know, like what they wish to gain from it. And I know Progress, you probably have your survey and you'll take that. But if anybody doesn't mind, you know, sharing, it would be helpful for me because I'm just curious.
Well, hi, Vita. I don't mind sharing.
Mhm.
So I am actually pivoting into the industry. I'm a real estate associate broker right now. And so I am actually a little bit intrigued by the technology sales part of it. I'm not a really big tech person, but when I looked at what like the responsibilities and like um, the overall aspect of the like tech sales part, I thought, hey, I think I can do that. And I also am wanting to get out of the field because I want to be, 10 years and out. I'm 50. And so I'm just looking for a career that I can, do remotely and also bring in my transferable skills into the industry. And so that's why I'm here.
Very cool. And, you know, there's a lot, oh my God, in real estate,
Mm-hmm.
like you pivoting, there's so much opportunity in that space.
Wow.
There's a myriad of issues that the real estate community actually has to be concerned on, especially when it comes to personally identifiable information of your customers,
Mm-hmm.
the financial information that you're taking from them, and your
Wow.
interactions with the banks and their jobs and all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And able to protect that information, or even you know, you being a realtor, understanding those manual processes is probably a pain in the butt. Depending on what you're interested in, you may not be interested in the technology, but you sure as heck may be interested in terms of process improvement and improving
Mm-hmm.
processes and making them more efficient, right? There's a
Yes.
variety of different aspects of technology that's not just the technical coding piece. I think people forget, right? You need
Mm-hmm.
people to understand and how to optimize processes. But even in the real estate, in the mortgage arena, there's a huge opportunity in regards to, I'm biased, I'm sorry, I'm gonna talk about cyber, but in respect to cybersecurity, there's a huge issue, even in terms of the applications that the realtor community uses, right? You can, oh my God, it's like a myriad of different things that you can actually look at. So think about it from that space. Don't think about that you're not technical.
Okay.
That's not the only thing you need in the tech space. if we all focus on the technical piece, we'd be in a lot of trouble, right? So you gotta
Okay.
have to have people that come to the table with a lot more. You come to the table being on the real estate side and with sales especially,
Mm-hmm.
because you know how to influence people. Well, lo and behold, guess what? In cyber, that's all you doing is trying to convince people to do
Oh,
what they
wow.
do, due diligence, right? You're
Okay.
trying to influence them to implement a process or a control, meaning not just always technical, but create a policy or to enhance a process, right? In support of protecting something. That requires you to have excellent communication skills and be relatable and build relationships. And you're in real estate, that's all you do
Yes.
all day.
Mm-hmm.
That's easy peasy. Congratulations to you. I think
That is
that's
so awesome. Thank you for the information. I didn't even
welcome.
think about like the cybersecurity space. That is so awesome because you're absolutely right. Everything that you said, that's awesome.
Yeah, I know I'm biased, sorry.
No, but that's awesome. I didn't even look at it's so much to look at and consider. And that's why it's very intriguing to me. I'm like, wow, this is interesting. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right. Is there any more questions before we go? Okay. I guess not. But once again, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I am not in the tech industry personally, but I have learned a thing or two from this session. I think it is fully packed. And I know that the people who are going to watch this recording later are definitely going to benefit. So it's not just the people who are on here right now. your knowledge that you just shared would continue impacting other people who would see this much later. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I'm inspired by all of you. Just the fact that you even have an interest in you're seeking questions and knowledge gives me a lot of hope and is very fulfilling for me. So thank you, Progress, for the opportunity. And thanks all of you for participating. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Just to put it out there, tomorrow we are having another session by another powerful speaker. She's going to speak specifically on imposter syndrome and building your confidence as a woman. So tomorrow, if you're available, it is by 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. GMT, the UK time. So if you have the link with which you registered for this session, you can use the same link to register for that session. It's on there. But yeah, thank you very much. I'm gonna end this now. Thank you so much for coming. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and also next weekend we have another powerful session as well. So thank you.